I used to love golf. My father taught me how to play, and I enjoyed the time we spent together. It brought us closer. I grew up in Eastern Virginia, so I was able to play about 9 months out of the year, sometimes more. I wasn't obsessed, but I enjoyed it. I was mostly an average player, but it depended on how much I practiced. My name is Rob, and I was mostly an introvert in school. I was what you would call a late bloomer. In 9th grade, I was 5 feet 3 inches, and by 11th grade, I was 6 feet 0 inches. I'm average looking, but most people who know me say I have a good sense of humor and an easygoing personality. I also lost my virginity late. It happened the summer before I started college. She was my girlfriend, and we did it together so we wouldn't be virgins anymore. It wasn't very romantic, and the sex was bad, but at least we both went to college with at least some sexual experience. College was a great time for me. I attended one of the largest universities in the state and really enjoyed my studies. I went to football games and met a lot of new people. I dated a lot of girls, but never found my soulmate. I had a girlfriend for almost a year, but she found someone she wanted to be with more than me. And although it hurt and my pride was hurt, I understood her. After college, I got a job at a bank and entered the next phase of my life. I had friends who introduced me to girls, but none of them seemed like the one. Over time, an old friend got married. I went to the wedding and reconnected with many other old friends. One of them introduced me to a very sweet petite beauty with brown hair. She was quiet and reserved, but I felt something for her from the moment I saw her. Her name was Sandra, and she was my age. That evening, I left the wedding thinking that Sandra was special. I didn't wait long to ask her out, and we started dating regularly. Soon I realized that I was in love. Sandra was very sweet and kind, and I began to think that we were meant for each other. This impression was reinforced by the fact that we could sit for hours and just talk. Sandra told me that she had had several boyfriends, but I was the first one she had truly loved. She also mentioned that, although she had kissed her previous boyfriends, she was still a virgin. As we continued dating and grew closer, I wanted to start a sexual relationship. She refused, saying she wanted to wait until we were married. About 9 months later, I finally asked her to marry me, and she said yes and was very excited. We told our parents, and she told all her friends. I was very happy too. While we were preparing for the wedding, I noticed that she had become more affectionate and touched me more often. I was willing to wait to have sex, but I thought she could help me get off in other ways. I just didn't want to demand her vagina or ass. So, although we didn't have vaginal sex, we did other things, and I got some relief. She learned to give amazing blowjobs, slow and teasing sucking that made my cock feel so much better. Although she never swallowed, she got better and better at oral sex and seemed to enjoy it too. I also gave her pleasure, as no one had ever licked her pussy before. I really enjoyed doing it. I liked seeing her get hot and wet after I played with her clit and her very tight little pussy. I was still very horny and couldn't wait for our wedding. Finally, the day came, we got married and started our life together. We both worked. She was a teacher and I worked at a bank. We didn't earn much, but everything was fine. We made love a lot and tried everything except anal sex. She still didn't swallow, but otherwise she gave me everything. We had been married for about 4 years when we decided to have children in the near future. We both agreed that at the end of the school year she would stop taking birth control pills, and hopefully we would start preparing for parenthood. As mentioned earlier, I continued to play golf with my regular foursome, playing every Saturday, and sometimes once a week during the week. Once a year, our area hosted a PGA tournament, and I always attended at least one day. Sometimes I volunteered and helped out for a couple of days. Our bank was also a sponsor, and most of the employees helped out with the event. It was always interesting to watch the pros play. Their talent was amazing. For those who have never volunteered, one of the rules was to never talk to the pros. We were supposed to help, but not interact with them. Most of the pros were friendly, but some were not, and you quickly learned to stay away from them. This year, I plan to go on Saturday and watch from behind the fence. My wife wasn't interested in golf, but I suggested she come with me to get some fresh air, as it was a beautiful day for a walk. After much persuasion, she finally agreed to go with me. We started watching various players that I found interesting. My wife wasn't thrilled, but she was good company and watched too. Later in the round, we watched a famous golfer who wasn't a favorite, but he was interesting to watch. He was mostly just trying to finish the round and sign his scorecard. As we stood behind the fence, he hit the ball, and it landed in the crowd. The ball bounced off my leg and came to rest in the grass. It probably saved him a stroke because we were close to where the ball would have gone out of bounds, and that would have cost him another stroke. When he and his caddy approached, we all parted like the Red Sea. I was standing right there with Sandra. When he came over and found his ball, some fans said that it was the ball that hit me that kept him in the game. He just laughed and whispered something to his caddy. I kept quiet and continued watching. The caddy handed him his club and he took a couple of practice swings. After the shot, he turned to my wife and thanked her for her help. The caddy winked and she just blushed. I asked her what that was, but she just shrugged. We followed the group to the green and stood behind them to watch. He made par and was about to leave, but whispered something to his caddy, who stopped and talked to Sandra as they walked away from the green. When I turned to leave, I saw that the caddy was still talking to my wife. I waited until the caddy caught up with the player and asked her what he had said. Sandra replied that he wanted to invite us to dinner after the game. I thought that was nice and assumed he considered it good compensation for hitting me with his ball. So I followed him until the end of the game. I noticed that he and his caddy kept looking at Sandra, laughing and winking at her. I love my wife and know that she is very attractive and that she looked gorgeous in her pretty golf shirt and tight shorts that accentuated her petite but curvy figure. One of the things I have always loved about Sandra was her large, puffy nipples. Today I could see them protruding and forming noticeable bumps through her shirt. She just kept smiling and following me. We stayed at the 18th hole and watched as a few more players approached. It usually takes a few minutes for players to sign their scorecards. After a few minutes, the caddy approached us and motioned for us to come over. He said there was a problem, and they only had room for one person for dinner. He asked Sandra if she would like to go with them. I shook my head and said we appreciated the offer, but we were leaving. The caddy told me to let her answer for herself, that dinner would be great, and he was looking forward to it. I was shocked when Sandra turned to me and said she would like to have dinner because she was hungry and tired and thought it was very thoughtful of him. I said, "What about me?" She replied, "Oh, honey, it won't take long. I'll be back soon. You can watch some more golf, and I'll relax and enjoy dinner. That way we both get what we want." Katie joined in. "Yeah, be a man. Let your wife enjoy her dinner." I was furious and said it was ridiculous, but she kissed me and said she'd be back soon. I was so surprised I didn't know what to say. Then the caddy picked up her rope for her, and she said she'd call me later when she was done, and the caddy walked her off. After she left, I realized that we had left our cell phones in the car because they weren't allowed on the course during the tournament. I called her, but the caddy told me to go watch some more golf and that she would call me from his phone when she was done. I was devastated and humiliated, watching the love of my life walk away from me, laughing and happy that she was going to dinner with someone else. Standing there, I could feel everyone looking at me. I heard one golf fan say, "That pro is a jerk for asking a married woman out to dinner." I decided I needed to leave and walk down the fairway away from the crowd. The further I walked, the harder I fought to keep my composure. It was almost 6 o'clock, and I figured that since they would need a couple of hours to eat dinner, I could wander around for a while. I went back to my car and grabbed my cell phone. It also occurred to me that since Sandra had left her cell phone behind, she might not even have my number. I knew I didn't have her number memorized, and always relied on finding it in my contact list. I was suddenly overcome with the feeling that she wouldn't be able to contact me, even if she wanted to. Although watching her leave, I thought she might not care whether I was there or not. As I continued to wander, I realized that the sun was already low in the sky. I didn't want to look at my watch, but it was already 7:30. Time was passing, and I realized that this was going to be the worst day of my life. How could my sweet, loving Sandra just throw me away like yesterday's trash? I loved her with all my heart, and we shared everything together. Now she was experiencing what I could never give her, an exciting lifestyle that is usually only available to the rich and famous. Finally, I decided that the best thing I could do was go back to the club and ask if anyone had seen them. Unfortunately, only players and guests were allowed in the club. I was alone again, and very angry that I had been abandoned. Around 8 o'clock, I returned to my car in the parking lot and decided it would be best to just leave. Sandra would probably call my home phone because that was the number she had memorized. Sandra wasn't a big drinker, but from what I heard, many professionals drank a lot. Probably their lifestyle was such that they were used to having more fun than we did. She drank little, and after a couple of glasses of wine or a couple of cocktails, she became much more relaxed. Now I was in a complete panic. I got in my car and drove home. The trip took about 45 minutes because of traffic, caused by many others also leaving the golf course. I kept my phone close to me and prayed that my wife would call. All possible scenarios ran through my mind. I entered our apartment at 9 p.m. I checked my messages, and the only message was from Sandra's mother asking if we wanted to join them for dinner that evening. Pacing around the room, I called the tournament headquarters and said I needed to talk to Sandra and that she was with a professional golfer. They just said they would pass the message on. When I said it was urgent, they said they would try to get in touch with him. Another hour passed, but there was no call or news. I was torn between worry and rage. I was just as angry at Sandra as I was at that jerk of a pro. Sandra had never given me any reason to worry about her love or loyalty. Now I was worried that she might have passed out and was in danger, or just having fun in the arms of another man, a famous, rich man. Who wouldn't want to experience a life of luxury that we could never afford? However, I couldn't understand why she had treated me so disrespectfully. Finally, just as I was about to fall asleep, the home phone rang. It was the professional. He said that Sandra had had too much to drink and needed to stay there until she sobered up. I was furious and told him I would come and get her. He replied that there was no need, as she was asleep and he would take her home when she woke up. I demanded that he put her on the phone. He just laughed and said he would try. A few minutes later, she came to the phone, and I told her I would come and get her. She replied, "No, Rob, I'm fine. I just need to rest. I'll come home later. I'm fine. He's taking me home. You go to bed." I told her she had to come home immediately or I would be there in 30 minutes. I asked her what she preferred and she replied, "Rob, you're embarrassing me. I'll come home later." Then she hung up. I hung up, not believing that my wife had told me to go to bed and that she would come home later. I looked at the caller ID and saw private. I tried calling back, but the number didn't answer. Now I was in deep trouble and hoped that Sandra wasn't in any kind of trouble. I went upstairs and just lay on my bed, staring at the ceiling. I lay there for what seemed like hours. I had to do something. I got up, found information about the professional golfer, and tried to find out everything I could about him. He was married, had 2 children, and a beautiful trophy wife. Why did he need mine? I thought about how I could contact his family. The chances were slim, but at least I was doing something. Then I decided I had to take action. If she wanted to humiliate me and probably fuck another man, I would make her life hell. I wasn't going to stay married to someone who was so easy to manipulate. I decided I had to leave. It was midnight. I packed a bag for a hotel, but I was very worried about Sandra and wanted to make sure she got home safely. I had mixed feelings. I wanted to make sure she was safe, and then I wanted revenge. I needed to find out what she had done. She had never lied to me, and I could usually tell when she wasn't being completely honest. If she had slept with that bastard, our marriage was over. If he had taken advantage of her, then maybe we still had a chance. However, when I spoke to her on the phone, she didn't sound drunk and she cursed at me in front of him. It was another humiliation. I thought that if she called after I left, I wouldn't be able to answer, but that seemed unlikely. She clearly didn't care where I was. So at midnight, I left Sandra's cell phone at home and went to a motel. I knew there were a few inexpensive motels near the highway, and I stopped at one of them. It was ridiculous because I had no intention of sleeping, but I lay down on the bed anyway. I must have fallen asleep for a while because when I woke up, the sun was already shining. It was 8:30 a.m. I got up, checked my cell phone, and found 4 messages. I had left it on but turned off the sound. Sandra had tried to call me at 3:40, 4:10, 5:30, and 7:15. I figured she had gone home after 3, and I was curious to know what she wanted to say. In the first message, she apologized. In the second, she sounded concerned, and in the last one, she sounded angry. By then, I was laughing. Where was her concern earlier in the evening? I just got up, took a shower, and went to have breakfast. I thought about what to do next. I needed to see her, but for now I knew she was home and safe, and that was more important to me because I still loved that stupid bitch. My phone rang, and I switched it to voicemail again. I glanced at it and saw that it was her mom. I loved her mom and dad, and they were always nice to me because they knew how much I loved their daughter. On Sundays, her parents usually went to church, and sometimes we went with them. We had plans to go to their house for dinner that evening. I finished breakfast and went back to my room. My departure was at 11 o'clock, so if I was going to stay, everything was fine. But if I was going to leave, I needed to get ready. I checked out of the hotel and then decided to go to the park and just walk around the trails. I hoped it would help me clear my head about what to do next. My phone rang a few more times, and I checked it but didn't answer. Sandra was probably worried because I hadn't left a note or anything after our conversation yesterday. The question kept running through my head. Did she sleep with him, or did she just have dinner and a drink? Either way, I think she chose him over me. She cheated on me because she was emotionally attached to him. I couldn't imagine her cheating, but I also couldn't imagine what she had done in the last 24 hours. I walked around for a few hours and my phone kept ringing. Once it was Sandra's friend, once it was my sister. There were also several calls from Sandra herself. I called my sister back. As my older sister, she always looked out for me, and I knew I could talk to her. My sister Sally answered and said, "Sandra is freaking out. Where are you?" I asked her, "Did she tell you what happened last night?" Sally replied, "She was at dinner, and you were watching golf and left." "Did she say anything else?" I asked. "No, nothing. Just that she didn't know where you were when she got home," Sally replied. I told my sister what had happened and that I had finally left the house after midnight. I was afraid that when she came home, I might hurt her. Sally was shocked. "She would never cheat on you, Rob. She loves you so much." I just said to my sister, "Ask her what she was doing from 6 p.m. to 3 a.m. Sally was silent and said she would call her and find out the whole story if she could. I continued my walk, and about an hour later, my sister called me again. She said, "I don't know what happened, but she swears she didn't sleep with him." I told her that Sandra's word wasn't worth a damn right now. Sally understood, but said, "You still need to talk to her." I thought about it, but I needed more time to decide what I wanted to do. Stay with her or leave her. I went to a fast food restaurant to get something to eat, as I was hungry after my walk and all the worry. Sandra kept calling, and I finally decided I should call her back. Sandra answered the phone. "Rob, honey, I was so worried about you. I'm sorry. I didn't do anything to him. Please forgive me. Come home." I told her I'd be home soon, but I didn't think I could go to her parents' house. She could go by herself. She said no, she wanted to be with her husband, and he was the only thing that mattered to her. I laughed and hung up. Later that day, I returned to our apartment. I almost decided to go to the tournament to find my wife's lover, but I knew that would only cause more problems, so I just went home. I walked in the door, and there was Sandra with her friend Angela. Angela just hugged me and left as soon as I walked in. I wondered what that meant. Sandra stood up and walked over to me, but I held out my hand, and she stopped and started crying. I stood there motionless and just let her cry. I told her to sit down. "We have things to talk about." I brought her some water, she sat down on the couch, and I sat across from her so I could see her beautiful eyes. I loved this woman and thought about what life would be like without her. I told her I wanted to know everything that had happened during those 9 hours she had spent with that professional jerk. She started by saying that they went to a club and had dinner in the main hall. I asked if they were there alone or with the caddy. She replied that it was just the two of them, but there were a lot of people around. I asked if the table was so small that only 2 people could sit at it. She blushed and admitted that there could have been one more person sitting there. She said he was a gentleman, that many professionals approached them and that she was introduced to him. I asked her to continue her story. She said they ate and talked for a couple of hours and that he was a very interesting man. He had traveled to many countries and visited some interesting places. I just nodded and asked how much she had drunk. She said a couple of glasses of wine. They continued talking, and he invited her to his room, but she said it wasn't a good idea. They stayed there until almost 10, and after a couple more glasses of wine, she felt dizzy. He suggested again that she go to his room, where she could rest, and he would tell her more stories about his life as a professional golfer. My blood boiled, but I tried to remain calm. They went to his room, which Sandra said was very nice and beautiful. Around that time, he called me and said that Sandra was a little drunk and needed to rest. I asked if she was really asleep, and she shook her head and said no, but she didn't want me to come for her because he said he would take her home. I wanted to save you the trouble. Then Sandra remembered she was talking to me and said she shouldn't leave because he was being so nice to her. I almost exploded when I reminded her how she said I disgraced her and then hung up on me. "How do you think I felt when you were in his room and your weak husband was waiting for you at home?" She broke down and started crying again. This time, I got up, grabbed a lamp, and threw it against the wall, smashing it to pieces. She jumped up and ran out of the room, crying. I knew I shouldn't lose my temper, but I couldn't control myself. I waited about an hour, then went up to our room and told her to come down so we could finish our conversation. I really didn't want to hear the rest, but I had to. This story would determine whether my marriage would survive. She gave in and came back downstairs. Her eyes were red and swollen, and she spoke so softly that I could barely hear her. She said, "After I hung up, I felt so bad about what I said to you that I started crying, and Pro came over and hugged me." She noticed that I was angry again and quickly added, "That's all there was. He asked if I wanted more wine. I said no. He got up, poured himself another glass, and asked if it was hard for him without his wife and children. He said he missed them, but that this was the life he had chosen, and it was working out pretty well for him. He told me about his childhood, where he lived and went to school. He talked for a long time, and then asked if he could hug me for a minute because he had been away from his family for so long. I kind of shook my head, but he came over and hugged me for a moment. Then he kissed me on the cheek and tried to pull me closer, but I stood up. I told him I couldn't do that I loved my husband and couldn't do anything. I asked him if players often cheat when they're away. He laughed and said some do and some don't. I asked him if he had, and he said he had. I felt very uncomfortable, and he noticed and said, "Don't worry, no one will ever know whether we did it or not." I told him that I would know, and I couldn't live with that. "Rob, it's true, and I swear to God that I didn't do anything else. Please believe me." By that time, it was very late, and he said he would drive me home. We waited almost an hour for his car, and we kept talking. Finally, the car pulled up, and he drove me home. She looked at me intently and said, "Rob, I love you more than anyone could ever love another person. My heart beats for you, and we are so close in so many ways. I know I hurt you, and I'm so sorry." I just sat there silently, and she said, "Honey, please say something. I can't live without you." I asked, "What time did you get home?" She said 3:30. I looked her in the eyes and said, "What if I did that to you? If some woman invited me to dinner and I spent 9 hours with her, almost 5 of them in her hotel room, how would you feel?" She started crying again. I just shook my head and got up. I told her, "I need to take a walk. I need to think some more." I asked her, "Why did you leave me on the golf course? That was the most humiliating thing anyone who said they loved me has ever done to me. When the hell did you become so heartless?" She shook her head and just moaned. "I just thought you'd like to watch golf while I had dinner. Either you're the most callous person I know or you're the most naive, and by the way, he's not a gentleman. A gentleman wouldn't invite a married woman to his room. Besides, he lied when he said there wasn't room for another person at dinner. We're not going to your parents' house tonight. I'm going to get some pizza." Sandra had already told her mother everything. Her mother scolded her and said that if she had been there, she would have slapped her to bring her to her senses. When she told me about it, she burst into tears again. I went out to get pizza. My head was still spinning from what she had told me. Did she think I believed that nonsense? Or was she being honest and nothing like that had really happened? I was still confused. I called my sister again and told her what Sandra had said. My sister said that Sandra had told her almost the same thing. Then I decided to call Angela and see if she had anything to add. I told her that we hadn't finished talking and I wanted her to tell me what Sandra had said. Angela said that Sandra had told her that they had never touched each other except when he hugged her and kissed her goodbye. I asked if it was a passionate kiss, and Angela said that according to Sandra, it was a quick kiss on the lips, but nothing passionate. I picked up the pizza and went home. When I arrived, I asked Sandra if he was handsome. She was a little surprised, but said yes, he was cute, but that was all. I continued to ask her more direct questions. "Did you get turned on when you were talking to him?" She replied, "It was interesting to hear about his lifestyle, but I wasn't sexually aroused." She blushed. I wondered what that meant. "Did you realize he wanted to sleep with you?" She replied, "I'm sure he did, but I turned him down and he didn't pressure me." I asked, "Could you tell he was excited?" Sandra blushed and said, "No, I don't think so, and if he was, I didn't notice. Please, Rob, nothing happened. I love you very much. Please don't think I betrayed you. I didn't." I had to confirm Angela's words, so I asked, "Did he kiss you goodbye?" She nodded but said, "It was a quick kiss on the lips and a short hug, nothing more. Rob, I'm sorry I put myself in that position and did that to you. You don't deserve to be hurt by anyone. You're the sweetest, kindest man I've ever met. I was just acting like a teenager in the presence of a famous person. It was interesting, but not sexual in any way. At least not with me." We ate in silence, sighing occasionally. The phone rang, but neither of us answered. We just let it go to voicemail. Her mother called, then Angela, and then my mother. Everyone was busy with family gossip tonight. I decided to talk to my mother, since Sally had already told her everything, and said we were talking. My mother reminded me that she had always loved Sandra very much, and thought we were made for each other. "Thanks, Mom. I'll call you back later." Sandra and I were both exhausted because neither of us had slept much of the night. I was planning to take Monday off, and she was preparing lessons for her substitute. We worked in different rooms. When it got late, I didn't know where to sleep. I decided that I could sleep on the pull-out couch and she could sleep in the bed. She begged me to lie down with her. She said that even though she knew I was angry, she really needed my company just to lie next to her. "Please," she begged. I wanted to get a good night's sleep and thought it might be better to sleep separately. She just nodded and said she understood. Finally, I told her that if she slept with him, it would continue because I wouldn't be there. She said again that nothing had happened and that she was willing to do anything to prove it. Then she suddenly remembered that he had given her his cell phone number and told me to call him. I looked at her and thought about it. The tournament had just ended, and I wondered if I could talk to that jerk. Then I thought he was probably already on his way to the next tournament and wouldn't answer the phone. She suggested I call him tomorrow or whenever and ask. She seemed happy with that suggestion. That meant that they had either rehearsed their answers in advance or she was telling me the truth. I said I'd think about it, and we both went to bed. I don't think we slept any better than the night before. But when I woke up, she was making breakfast. I could smell coffee and bacon. During the week, we rarely had time for a proper breakfast, so this was a treat for us. For a moment, I was happy, but then reality set in and I took a shower, shaved, and went to the kitchen. She was wearing cute shorts and a simple t-shirt. I realized she wasn't wearing any underwear. I almost got angry, but then I decided I could just enjoy the view. We had a nice breakfast, chatting about various topics. When we finished, she said to me, "Rob, there is no other man in the world I want more than you. No one. The other day, I lost my mind and acted like a child. You didn't deserve that, and I will never let myself hurt or embarrass you again. You mean so much to me, and I will tell everyone I know, all my friends and family, how I behaved, and that I will do everything I can to keep you. Can you forgive me?" I looked into her beautiful eyes and said, "Yes, but I'll need time to rebuild my trust. I love you, Sandra, and I still don't want to live without you." With that, I hugged her and held her close. Sandra and I continued to live together, but in separate rooms for a while. I did call the prostitute on her cell phone, and to my surprise, she answered. I told her who I was. She told me the same story Sandra had told me. Nothing had happened. I felt a little better. We also started seeing a psychologist to see if we could get our marriage back on track. We found a psychologist named Dr. Jean Thomas. She had all the necessary qualifications, but I was a little wary because the first 2 sessions were more about me and my unwillingness to forgive Sandra than about her behavior. During the 3rd session, when she started asking if my ego was bigger than my marriage, I got angry and said, "Why do counselors love to belittle men for their egos, but never see a problem with women's vanity? You seem to think that my wife did the right thing by having dinner alone with another man and visiting his hotel room. Even if nothing sexual happened, it was completely unacceptable. But you don't question her motives or desires." With that, Sandra began to cry. Dr. Thomas apologized and said that during her private conversation with Sandra, she had discussed the inappropriateness of her behavior. She also mentioned that her job was not to take sides, but only to determine whether reconciliation was possible. Sandra said, "Rob, I know I was wrong about everything. I will forever torment myself for hurting you. I love you, and I am very sorry for what I did to you. Please understand that I fully acknowledge my bad behavior." After that, I calmed down. When the session ended, I wondered if I would ever be able to get over the pain I had experienced. I asked her if Pro had told her she was attractive. She blushed and said yes, and that she was pleased that another man found her attractive. I said, "I tell you this every day, and you don't seem to take my words seriously, but when someone else says it, you react so strongly." She replied, "Rob, I know you love me, but sometimes when someone else says it, it becomes more real to me. It's always nice to hear that other people think I'm beautiful." We returned to our normal work schedule, and gradually our relationship began to improve. When Sandra started the new school year and we became very busy again, the pain seemed to gradually fade away. Not completely, but partially. We were still making love, but we decided to wait with the children until we both felt we had gotten rid of our demons, and she readily agreed that it was her fault. Finally, one Friday evening, her parents invited our family over for a barbecue. My sister and her family came, as did my parents. Sandra stood up and addressed everyone. She confessed everything and asked everyone to forgive her for cheating on her husband. It was sincere, she was crying, and everyone was moved by her genuine feelings, including me. I stood up, hugged her, and held her close. That night, we made love for the first time, and we both felt that we had finally overcome Sandra's mistake. I truly love her, and she loves me, and I hope there will be no more problems. I asked her if I could have dinner and spend an evening with another woman, just once if I didn't have sex. Tears welled up in her eyes, and I told her that I might never take advantage of that right. I may have forgiven her, but it's hard to forget when someone you love hurts you so deeply. Epilogue. 5 years later. I've been playing golf less lately because we have a daughter and a son, and I spend most of my weekends with my family. Our life is wonderful again, and Sandra has expanded her sexual repertoire so that everything is now included, much to my delight. After I almost lost her and dealt with my anger, we returned to our old life and had 2 beautiful children. By the way, I never went back to the golf tournament. I recently read an article that the professional player got married for the 3rd time. I wonder how many marriages he has destroyed. Fortunately, not mine.